AITA for confronting my parents at my grandma's memorial over a deed that was never signed by me? I'm Olivia, 36, and for most of my adult life, I was the daughter who made things easier for everyone else. I was the one who changed plans if someone else had a conflict, picked up an extra bill without making a speech about it and said, "It's fine," so often that my family eventually stopped checking if anything was actually fine. Jonah and I had been married for 7 years when all of this happened, and somewhere along the way, my parents decided marriage had changed the meaning of every boundary I set. If I agreed with them, I was still their daughter. If I disagreed, Jonah had gotten into my head. The stupid part is that I helped create the pattern. I knew Fiona was favored. I knew my parents expected more flexibility from me because I was the stable one. I also knew I hated drama, especially family drama, and I had spent years convincing myself that one more compromise was easier than one more fight. That worked until my grandmother died and my family tried to turn my silence into a signature. Grandma's house was small. Nobody looking at it from the outside would have called it some grand inheritance. It had 2 bedrooms, narrow kitchen cabinets that never closed quite right, a front porch that leaned just enough to make a marble roll toward the steps, and a maple tree that dropped leaves into every possible corner of the yard. To me, it was still Grandma's house. She had lived there for more than 40 years. When I was a kid, she kept a chipped yellow mug full of wooden spoons beside the stove, and a ceramic bowl of hard candy on the coffee table. When I got old enough to drive, I became one of the people she called when a cabinet hinge came loose or the porch light burned out too high for her to reach. I had a spare key on an old pear-shaped keychain she gave me when I was 22. Ugliest keychain in America, Jonah once told me. It's a pear. It looks like a green light bulb with a leaf. Grandma gave it to me. Then it is a beautiful green light bulb with a leaf. That was Jonah. He could make fun of something without making fun of the fact that it mattered to me. As Grandma got older, I handled more small things for the house. I paid a property tax installment once when an automatic payment problem came up, and she was afraid she had missed the deadline. I covered part of a porch roof repair after a storm because my parents said they were short that month. I kept the invoice not because I expected repayment but because I keep receipts for almost everything. Fiona did help Grandma too, just differently. She brought the kids over, sent photos, picked up groceries sometimes, and made sure Grandma got invited to birthday parties. Grandma adored Fiona's 2 children. I did too. The problem was never that Fiona did nothing. The problem was that in our family, Fiona's needs always arrived with emergency lighting around them. Fiona is 4 years younger than I am. Growing up, if she forgot a school project, somebody drove to the store at 9 at night. If I forgot something, I was told natural consequences built character. If Fiona was late on a bill, my parents talked about how expensive life had become. If I said no to lending money, Mom asked why I was so cold. Fiona learned the system as surely as I did. She was not cruel about it. That almost made it harder. She could look genuinely hurt when I refused her because she had spent her whole life being taught that my extra capacity was part of the family's shared resources. After Grandma died, I spent 3 weekends helping clear the house. I washed dishes that had been sitting in the back of cupboards for 20 years, boxed her sweaters, and stood in her bedroom with Fiona while we decided which jewelry pieces should go to which grandchild. We cried together that day. That matters to me, because what happened later did not erase every decent moment we had ever shared. Fiona was still my sister. She was still the person who knew which Christmas song Grandma hated, and how Grandma always pretended not to notice when we stole frosting from cakes cooling in the kitchen. But grief does not make people fair. Sometimes it just gives old family habits a new place to operate. A few weeks after the funeral, Mom called me on a Tuesday evening. "We need to get Grandma's place organized," she said. I was standing at my kitchen counter opening mail. I thought Miriam was still waiting on a few estate papers. She is. This is separate. What does separate mean? Mom sighed like I had already made the conversation difficult. We are trying to reorganize the property so Fiona can make use of it. That wording stuck with me. Not sell. Not transfer. Reorganize. How would Fiona make use of it? I asked. She and Derek need more room. You know that. I did know that. Their 2 kids were getting older, and Fiona and Derek had been looking at houses for months. Their current place was cramped. I had heard all about the bunk beds, the tiny backyard, the rising prices, and the mortgage rates. None of that answered my question. Are you talking about selling Grandma's house? We are talking about doing what makes sense for the family. Mom, you do not have children. You and Jonah are comfortable. Fiona needs the help now. There it was. Not an answer, but the rule underneath the answer. I leaned against the counter. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come over Sunday. We will talk. Do I need to bring anything? No. And please do not turn this into one of those things where Jonah has to review every piece of paper. That made me look down at the phone. Jonah was in the living room. I could hear the television low in the background. Why would you care whether Jonah reads something? I asked. I care because this is family business. He is my family. You know what I mean. I did. When I hung up, Jonah called from the other room. Everything okay? I almost said yes. That was my reflex. Instead, I walked in and told him my mother wanted to reorganize Grandma's house for Fiona. He muted the television. What does reorganize mean? I asked that. And she answered around it. He nodded once. Do you want me there Sunday? No. He did not look offended. Okay. I know how that sounds. It sounds like you want to handle your family. I do. If you come, they will spend the whole time acting like every sentence came from you. Then I won't come. He picked up the remote, then set it down again. Just read anything before you sign it. I always read things. He gave me a look. What? You skim family things when somebody is standing over you saying it is no big deal. That happened once. 3 times that I know of. I threw a couch pillow at him. He caught it. But he was right. Sunday afternoon, I went to my parents' house alone. Fiona was already there. Derek was not. Dad had papers on the dining table, but they were stacked face down under a legal pad. Mom poured coffee nobody had asked for. We all agree Grandma would want Fiona to have the house, she said before I had finished sitting down. I looked around the table. Who is all? Mom frowned. Do not start. I'm asking because I do not remember agreeing. Dad folded his hands. Olivia, nobody is saying you did anything wrong. We are trying to keep this simple. Fiona looked exhausted. She had shadows under her eyes and a phone full of real estate listings open beside her. We found a place, she said. Not officially. We have not put in an offer yet. But it has 3 bedrooms and the school situation is better. If Grandma's house can be sold, it would give us enough for the down payment without wiping out everything else. I looked at her. So this is a sale. Mom cut in. Eventually. You told me we were reorganizing property. Because I knew you would hear the word sale and become emotional. That was impressive even by my mother's standards. She had hidden the word sale because she was concerned I might become emotional about being excluded from a sale. Dad slid one sheet from the stack toward me. Your grandmother's estate was structured in a way that leaves interests across family lines. We can clean that up and put the house with Fiona. It avoids unnecessary complications. I looked at the page. It was not a complete deed. It looked like a draft instruction sheet and a cover page from somebody handling documents. What does clean that up mean? It means you release your interest. There it was. I looked at Fiona. Were you going to tell me that part? Her face tightened. I thought Mom had. Mom told me we were reorganizing. Okay, well, yes. I need you to sign your share over. Why? Fiona blinked. I just explained why. No, you explained why you want money from the house. I am asking why the solution is for me to sign away my interest. Mom put her coffee cup down harder than necessary. Because you do not need it. It was almost a relief to hear her say it plainly. I turned back to the paper. I'm not signing anything today. Dad's jaw shifted. Nobody asked you to sign today. Then why are there papers on the table? Because adults prepare for conversations. I stared at him for a second. Then I said, good. As an adult, I'm going to take copies, read everything, and think about it. Mom said, this does not need to become a legal production. If it is only paperwork, nobody should mind me reading it. Fiona leaned back in her chair. Can you please not do this? Do what? Turn Grandma's house into money. That almost made me laugh, except she was asking me to give up my legal share so she could sell the house for a down payment. I did not bring up money, I said. You did. That is not what I mean. What do you mean? I mean you are acting like I am trying to take something from you. I looked at the paperwork again. Aren't you? Fiona's eyes filled. Mom immediately reached for her hand. That was how the rest of the meeting went. Whenever I asked for a concrete answer, somebody translated the question into an accusation against my character. Did I really care more about a percentage than my niece and nephew? Was Jonah worried I might give away his money? Did I think Grandma would want the house sitting empty? Why was I making Fiona beg? I kept saying the same thing. I wanted to read the documents and understand what I was being asked to give up. Dad finally gathered the papers. You have always been the practical one, he said. Do not start acting like everything is a negotiation. I stood. When my name is on it, I get to know what it is. Mom followed me to the door. You were not like this before Jonah. I put on my coat. Before Jonah, I was 29. You know what I mean. Again I did. I left without copies because Dad said the documents were still being revised. At the time that annoyed me. Later it scared me. The next 2 weeks were a slow drip of pressure. Mom left a voicemail telling me not to let outside voices turn a family decision into something ugly. Dad texted, everything is nearly done. We need you to be reasonable. That phrase bothered me enough that I read it 3 times. Everything is nearly done. Nothing involving me should have been nearly done. I had not signed anything. Fiona sent me separate messages, never in a group thread. I know you love the kids. I know you always said I should do what is best for them. I really need you not to make this about whether Mom and Dad handled every conversation perfectly. I wrote back, this is not about perfect conversations. I still have not seen the documents. She responded 15 minutes later. You have always said you wanted me to be okay. I stared at that message because I knew exactly what she was doing, and I also knew she believed it. Years earlier, during one of her rough patches, I had hugged her in my parents' kitchen and told her, you do what you need to do for those kids. I just want you to be okay. In my mind, that meant I loved her. In hers, apparently, it had become a standing authorization. Jonah knew some of this, but not all of it. That was my mistake. I told him Mom was being pushy. I told him Fiona wanted my share. I did not tell him my mother was repeatedly blaming him, and I did not tell him Dad had written that everything was nearly done. Part of me thought I was protecting Jonah from unnecessary resentment. Really, I was protecting myself from having to admit how bad it felt. I also kept paying things connected to the house. There was a final utility balance after Grandma died. I paid it because the account had once been tied to my email. There was a yard cleanup before winter. I sent money to Dad because he said nobody else had room that month. When an insurance-related bill came up, I covered part of that too. Each time Jonah would ask, are you sure? And I would say, it is still Grandma's house. He did not argue. One Thursday, about 6 weeks after that first meeting, a business envelope showed up in my mailbox with the property address printed beneath my name. I almost put it on the stack with tax notices and insurance advertisements. The return address was from a title company I did not recognize. Inside was a notice connected to a title search and a pending transaction. Most of the language was routine, but 2 things jumped out. First, the property was under contract. Second, there was a reference to a deed transfer that had already placed interests into Fiona's name. I stood at the kitchen counter and read it again. Then a third time. My hand started shaking, which irritated me. I did not want to be the person trembling over a piece of paper. I wanted to understand it. So I sat down, opened my laptop, and started making calls. The title company would not tell me much at first because I was not the seller listed on the contract. I explained that I had received their notice and that I believed I still had an ownership interest in the property. The woman on the phone paused. Can you hold? I held for nearly 10 minutes. When she came back, her voice was more careful. There is a recorded document in the chain that appears to transfer your interest. I never transferred my interest. Another pause. Then you may want to obtain a copy of the recorded instrument and speak with an attorney. We cannot advise you on ownership, but if you are disputing a signature or transfer, we need that in writing. My stomach went cold. What kind of document? A quitclaim deed. Signed by me. It appears to bear your signature. I stopped hearing the refrigerator, the traffic outside, everything. I asked how to get a copy. The woman gave me the recorder information and explained what they could accept from me regarding the pending closing. She was very precise about not giving legal advice. She did say one thing clearly. If you are asserting that your signature was not authorized, do not wait until the closing date to tell us. I did not. I obtained a copy of the deed. My name was there. My supposed signature was there. The date was there. For a few seconds my brain did that ridiculous thing where it tried to make the page less serious than it was. Maybe I had signed something months earlier and forgotten. Maybe there was another document. Maybe I had misunderstood what I was looking at. Then I saw the date. I knew exactly where I had been that day because Jonah had a follow-up appointment for a minor procedure, and I had driven him. I still had the appointment confirmation in my calendar. We had gotten lunch afterward and stopped at a pharmacy. I had paid with my card. I had not been at my parents' house. I had not been with Fiona. I had not signed a deed. The signature itself looked like mine if you saw it from across a room. Up close, it looked like a version of mine from years ago. I had changed the way I wrote the O in Olivia after I got married, because my old signature used to turn into a giant loop that collided with the rest of my name. The deed had the old loop. I sat there staring at it until a memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, when Grandma's porch roof was repaired, Mom had handled some insurance paperwork. I had signed an authorization related to a reimbursement because I had paid part of the invoice. Mom had kept copies of the entire packet. That signature had the old loop. I pulled out my receipt box because yes, I am the kind of person who still keeps paper receipts in labeled folders even though half my life is digital. I found the roof invoice, then the insurance copy, then my old signature. It was not proof of how the deed signature had been created, but the resemblance made the hair on my arms rise. The same oversized O, the same short tail at the end, even the odd spacing between my first and last name was similar. I took photos of everything. Then I opened my messages and started saving screenshots. Everything is nearly done. We just need you to be reasonable. You always said I should do what is best for the kids. Do not let Jonah read every family paper. I saved Mom's voicemails too. The strangest thing was how calm I became. I had spent weeks feeling guilty, defensive, and uncertain, like maybe I was making a simple family decision more complicated than it needed to be. The deed ended that. There was nothing abstract about my name on a document I had never signed. Jonah came home while I was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread around me. He put his keys down. What happened? I handed him the deed. He read the first page, then the signature page. Did you sign this? No. He looked at me. Are you sure? I was with you at your appointment that day. His face changed. Not anger first. Hurt. How long have you known? About 20 minutes. No. How long have you known this whole thing was farther along than they told you? I did not answer fast enough. He sat across from me. What didn't you tell me? I hated that question because there was no clean answer. I told him about Dad saying everything was nearly done. I told him about Mom's voicemails blaming him. I told him Fiona had already been talking about closing before I understood there was a sale contract. Jonah listened without interrupting. When I finished, he rubbed both hands over his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because I did not want you dragged into it. I was already dragged into it. Apparently, I am the reason you developed the dangerous habit of reading documents. I know. No, Olivia. I do not think you do. His voice was not loud, which made it worse. I have spent 7 years being careful not to step into your family fights. I do that because you asked me to, but I cannot protect you from something you keep pretending is smaller than it is. I was trying to keep it from becoming this. He tapped the deed once. It became this without your permission. I looked down. I know. He waited. Then he said, I do not need you to choose me over them. I need you to stop letting them choose for you. That one landed. I apologized. Not for my family. I could not apologize on their behalf. I apologized for allowing them to use Jonah as the villain in a story I had been too afraid to confront directly. He accepted the apology, but he did not immediately tell me everything was fine. That mattered too. There was a cost inside my marriage for the way I had handled my family. Not because Jonah controlled me, but because I had withheld things that affected both of us while expecting him to remain patiently outside the blast zone. We spent the rest of that evening organizing documents. The next morning I started making formal calls. I did not go to my parents' house. I did not call Fiona screaming. I did not post anything online. I called the title company and stated that I disputed the deed and had not authorized the signature. I asked what they needed in writing to flag the file. I was told to provide a signed statement and supporting identification, and I arranged for a notarized affidavit stating that I had not signed or authorized the deed in question. I also requested certified copies of the relevant property records. Then I made sure everything was sent in a way that created a record. Email confirmations. Certified mail where appropriate. Copies for myself. A folder on my computer backed up in 2 places. I stopped paying any expenses on the house that same day. Dad called that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. Olivia, I heard you contacted the title company. Call me before you make this worse. Nobody took anything from you. This was a formality to get the property where it needed to go. I saved the voicemail. Mom called next. I let that go too. Please stop letting legal language frighten you. Your grandmother wanted Fiona secure. You know that. Call me without Jonah sitting there and we can fix this. I saved that one too. Fiona called 6 times. I answered on the 7th call. She was crying so hard at first that I could barely understand her. What did you do? She asked. I disputed a deed I did not sign. You called the title company. Yes. They froze everything. They told me the transaction cannot move forward while ownership is disputed. We have a closing date, Olivia. I know that now. You knew we were trying to buy a house. I knew you wanted to buy a house. I did not know Grandma's house was under contract, or that someone had filed a deed with my signature. It was not like that. What was it like? She went quiet. Fiona. Mom and Dad said it was being handled. That is not an answer. I thought you were going to agree. But I had not. You always said you wanted me to do what was best for the kids. I told you I wanted you to be okay. That was not permission to sign my name. I did not sign your name. Did you know there was a deed with my signature on it? Another silence. Long enough. Fiona. I knew there were papers. That is not what I asked. I knew Mom said the paperwork was taken care of. Did you ask whether I signed? I thought you would. You thought I would, or you knew I had not? Her crying changed then. It became angrier. You know what this means for my kids? I closed my eyes. There it was again. Every road led back to the children. I know it affects your plan, I said. I am sorry the kids are caught in that. You are sorry? Yes. You are making us lose the new house. No. I am refusing to let a sale close on paperwork I did not authorize. Same result. No, it is not. It is to us. That was the moment I understood how far apart we were. To Fiona, the wrong thing was anything that interrupted the outcome she had already started planning around. The method had become secondary. I asked her one more time whether she knew my signature might not be legitimate. She said, I knew it was complicated. I wrote that sentence down immediately after the call. Over the next several days, the family pressure got worse. Mom sent texts about Grandma's wishes. Dad told me I had made this legal when it should have stayed family. An aunt I barely spoke to messaged that she hoped Jonah was not encouraging me to punish my sister. I replied to exactly one person. I wrote, there is a deed with my signature on it. I did not sign it. I have disputed it with the title company. I will not discuss it by phone. After that, I stopped defending myself in fragments. I wanted everything in writing. Aunt Miriam called me 3 days later. Miriam was Grandma's younger sister. She was 61, blunt in a way people tolerated because she had been blunt for decades, and historically committed to staying out of conflicts that did not directly involve her. "I heard there is some fight about the house," she said. "There is. Your mother says you changed your mind after agreeing to let Fiona have it." "I never agreed. She said you signed something and now you are contesting it because Jonah objected." I felt my face get hot. "I did not sign it." Miriam went quiet. "What do you mean?" "I mean there is a quitclaim deed with a signature that looks like mine. I did not sign it. The date on it is a day I was somewhere else with Jonah." Another pause. "Do you have a copy?" "Yes." "Send it to me." I hesitated. She said, "I am not asking so I can spread it around. I am asking because Gloria told me you had signed." I emailed her the deed and my affidavit. She did not call back that day. Meanwhile, the title company confirmed that the pending closing could not proceed as scheduled, while the ownership dispute remained unresolved. They were careful not to declare who was right. They did not need to. A disputed signature in the chain was enough to stop them from treating the title as clean. Fiona and Derek had already paid earnest money on the new house they wanted. Their financing also depended on proceeds from Grandma's property sale. Derek had locked a rate he was proud of and had apparently told several people they would be moving soon. I did not know all of that until later. What I did know was that the family suddenly became very interested in hosting a memorial dinner for Grandma. It was scheduled for what would have been her birthday, a little more than 3 months after her funeral. Mom had mentioned the idea before any of this started, so the dinner itself was not invented for the conflict. But the guest list grew after I disputed the deed. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. People who had heard some version of what I had supposedly done. Mom called me 6 days before the dinner. "You are still coming." Did not sound like a question. "I plan to." "Good. Your grandmother would not want this unpleasantness to keep people apart." I almost admired the nerve. "Will the house be discussed?" "This is a memorial dinner, Olivia." That was not my question. She exhaled sharply. "If you come looking for a confrontation, do not come." "I am not looking for one." "Then leave your papers at home." I looked at the notarized affidavit sitting on my desk. "I will bring whatever I need." "See? This is what I mean. Jonah has made you suspicious of everyone." "Mom, Jonah did not put my name on a deed." She hung up. "Jonah offered to come to the dinner with me." I thought about it, then told him no. Not because I was ashamed of him. The opposite. "I think they want you there," I said. "They want to point at you and make you the whole story." He nodded. "What do you want?" "I want to be able to say they did this without making you stand in the room and absorb it." "Fair." He looked at the copies I had printed. "Are you planning to bring those?" "Yes." "Planning to start something?" "No." He smiled a little. "Planning to finish something if they start it?" "Yes." Also fair. The dinner was at my parents' house. When I arrived, I knew within 30 seconds that Mom had lied about keeping the property dispute out of the evening. The dining table had been extended with 2 leaves. Folding chairs lined one side. Grandma's old casserole recipes were being served, along with ham, green beans, rolls, and the sweet potato dish she used to make every holiday. There were framed photos of her on the sideboard. My usual place, the place where I had sat at family dinners since I was a teenager, was gone. Not occupied. Gone. There was a chair placed several feet away near the coat rack, beside a little folding tray with a plate and silverware on it. I stopped in the entryway. Mom saw me looking. "That is your seat tonight." A few people nearby became very interested in arranging napkins. I set my purse on the back of the chair. "Why?" Mom looked directly at me. "This table is for people who remember what family means." There are moments when humiliation is so obvious it almost helps. If she had been subtle, I might have doubted myself. I might have wondered whether there was a seating issue, whether I was being too sensitive, whether I should just sit down and get through the evening. But she had moved my place beside the coat rack like I was a child being disciplined. Dad appeared from the kitchen carrying a serving spoon. Not tonight, Olivia. I have not said anything. Your face is saying enough. Theo, one of my cousins, looked from me to the chair. Is there not room at the table? He asked. Mom answered before I could. There is room for people who do not put outsiders above blood. There it was. Not hidden. Not private. Several relatives looked at me. I felt my pulse in my throat, but I did not feel confused anymore. I took the notarized letter and a copy of the deed from my purse. Then I walked to Mom's place at the table and set the affidavit beside her plate. Then explain why my signature is on a deed I never signed. Nobody applauded. Nobody gasped theatrically. The room just changed. A fork stopped against a plate. Somebody in the kitchen turned off the faucet. Theo looked at the paper, then at Mom. Mom's face tightened. What is this? You know what it is. I certainly do not. It is my notarized statement disputing the quitclaim deed that transferred my interest in Grandma's house to Fiona. Fiona was seated halfway down the table. Her expression went from angry to frightened. Dad put the serving spoon down. This is exactly what your mother asked you not to do. I looked at him. You moved my chair away from the table and announced I chose my husband over blood in front of everyone. This is a memorial dinner. I know. Then show some respect. Respect would have been not using my name on a deed I never signed. Mom pushed the affidavit away from her plate. You are making this sound criminal. I am saying I did not sign it. You knew what we were doing. I knew you wanted Fiona to have the house. I did not agree to transfer my share. You were going to. That is not the same thing. Dad stepped in. It was a formality. Miriam, who was sitting near the end of the table, turned toward him. A formality with her signature? Dad's face changed slightly. Miriam, do not insert yourself. You invited me to dinner. This is between us and Olivia. No, I said. You made it between everyone when you told people I voluntarily backed out because Jonah changed me. Theo held out his hand. Can I see the deed? I passed him one of my copies. Mom said. Do not encourage her. Theo scanned the page. Did you sign this, Olivia? No. Were you present when it was signed? No. Dad said. She knew the house was going to Fiona. Theo looked up. That is not what I asked. For the first time that night, Dad did not have an immediate answer. Fiona pushed her chair back. This is ridiculous. You are acting like Mom and Dad stole your house. I did not say that. You froze the sale. I disputed my signature. You knew what that would do. Yes. Her eyes flashed. You know what this means for my kids? I heard the familiar sentence and felt something in me finally stop responding to it. I know what it means for your purchase plan. It means we lose the house. I am sorry your kids are affected. Do not say you are sorry while doing this. What exactly do you want me to do, Fiona? Tell the title company that a signature I did not make is fine because you have children. She looked away. Mom jumped in. Your grandmother would have wanted you to help your sister. I helped Grandma with this house for years. This is not about keeping score. I paid taxes on it. I paid for repairs. I did yard cleanup after she died. I am not saying that gives me more than anybody else. I am saying it is strange that all my help counted as family loyalty until I wanted to read the paperwork. Dad's voice hardened. Nobody asked you to keep paying those things. That is true. I chose to. I am not paying anything else now. Mom stared at me. So that is what this is. Money. No. This is authorization. Fiona laughed once bitterly. You make everything sound so clinical. Because every emotional version of this ends with me giving you whatever you want. Derek had been quiet up to that point. He sat beside Fiona, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Then he said, Can we just talk about what has to happen to get the objection withdrawn? The room went quiet again, not dramatically, but because the sentence was too specific. I looked at him. What objection? He realized his mistake immediately. The title issue. How do you know exactly what I filed? Fiona turned to him. Derek. He shook his head. I mean, obviously the title company told us there was an objection. I said. They told you the closing was delayed because I disputed the signature. Yes. When did you learn that? He looked at Fiona. She looked at the table. Theo said, wait. You already had a closing date. Derek rubbed the back of his neck. We were under contract. Miriam said. Before Olivia agreed? Dad snapped. She was going to agree. Miriam looked at him for a long second. You keep saying that like future agreement is the same as past permission. Mom's face reddened. A family does not drag private pain into public. I almost laughed. You told everyone my husband turned me against you. That is how it looks. It looks that way because that is the version you gave them. Theo still had the deed in his hand. He asked, Olivia, how do you know you did not sign on that date? I was with Jonah at an appointment. I have the appointment confirmation and card transactions from that day. I also have an older document with a signature that looks much closer to this one than my current signature does. Mom's eyes flicked toward me. It was small. But I saw it. Miriam saw it too. What older document? She asked. A repair and insurance packet from Grandma's porch roof. Mom kept copies. Mom stood up. That is enough. No, Miriam said. It is not. Mom looked stunned. Miriam rarely challenged her directly. Miriam continued. You told me Olivia signed the house over and then changed her mind because Jonah objected. Mom's mouth opened. Miriam pointed at the deed. She says she never signed it. Which is it? Mom looked at Dad. Dad said. We were trying to avoid a needless fight. Theo leaned back in his chair. That is not an answer either. Fiona started crying again. Can everyone stop acting like we planned some crime? Mom and Dad were trying to help me. I thought Olivia would understand once it was done. I looked at her. There it was. Not a full confession. Not enough to answer every question about who did what. But enough. You thought I would understand once it was done, I repeated. Fiona wiped her face angrily. You always make me sound worse than I mean. I am using your exact words. You knew we needed the money. I knew you needed help. I did not know you were counting on a sale that depended on my silence. Derek said. The rate lock expires soon. Fiona turned on him. Please stop talking. But it was too late. Theo asked. You already used the expected sale proceeds for financing? Derek said. We have earnest money in. We had to show where the rest was coming from. I felt a strange mix of sympathy and anger. Their problem was real. They had found a house they wanted. They had money at risk. Their kids had probably been told about bedrooms and a yard. Fiona was not faking all of that. But every practical consequence they named depended on the assumption that my property interests could be cleared away whether I agreed or not. Dad pointed at me. This is what happens when people bring lawyers and title companies into family matters. Everyone loses. I did not create the title problem. You made it impossible to solve quietly. You cannot call it a family decision after removing the one person whose name you used. That was probably the sharpest thing I said all night. After that, I stopped trying to win the room. I had not come to get votes. I took the deed back from Theo and put it beside my affidavit. The title company has my written dispute. I am not withdrawing it. Any sale can be discussed after my legal interest is confirmed and the paperwork is corrected. I want a full accounting of the sale terms and any proposed distribution. Until then, I am not paying taxes, repairs, insurance, cleanup, or anything else on that house. Mom folded her arms. So you are holding the family hostage? No, I am not stopping a sale. I am stopping a lie from closing. Dad scoffed. You always have to make a phrase out of everything now. That almost made me smile because if he thought that was the problem, we were done. Picked up my purse. Miriam said. Are you leaving? Yes. Mom said. Of course you are. I turned to her. You moved my chair away from the table before I got here. I think you already decided how tonight was going to end. I left before dessert. That detail became family mythology within days. Depending on who told the story, I had stormed out, ruined Grandma's birthday dinner, humiliated my grieving mother, or exposed a forged property transfer after being publicly shamed. All of those versions contained pieces of truth. That was the uncomfortable part. I did choose a memorial dinner to put the deed on the table. I could have stayed quiet in the room and handled everything through paperwork afterward. I also knew that if I had done that, every person there would have gone home believing I was the selfish daughter who let her controlling husband stop Fiona from getting a house. I had spent too many years treating public lies as things I was obligated to correct privately. This time I did not. The practical fallout started the next morning. The title company formally confirmed that the closing would not occur on the scheduled date. Fiona and Derek's purchase became uncertain because their financing package depended on proceeds that no longer had a clear timeline. Their rate lock became a problem. Their earnest money was at risk depending on the terms of their contract and financing contingency. They scrambled with their lender and agent, but the house they wanted eventually went to someone else. Fiona blamed me for that. I understood why. I still did not withdraw the dispute. Mom called several relatives and said I had intentionally waited until the last minute to cause maximum damage. That was false. I had contacted the title company as soon as I knew about the deed. For once, I had dates, emails, and certified mail receipts that made the timeline hard to rewrite. Theo called me 2 days after the dinner. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "I believed you had already signed everything and then backed out. That is what they told people." "I know." He paused. "I still think doing it at the dinner was brutal. That is fair. But if you did not sign that deed, that is not a family squabble." That was the first time someone in my extended family said the distinction out loud without adding a lecture about compassion. Miriam was less gentle. She called Mom directly and demanded to know why she had been told I signed. I know this because Mom later accused me of turning Miriam against her, even though I had not asked Miriam to do anything. Several relatives stayed neutral. A couple told me I was right about the signature but wrong about the dinner. One uncle said I should have signed the share over anyway because Fiona had kids and I did not. I replied that having children did not grant someone authority to sign my name. He told me I was missing the spirit of the point. I stopped replying. Dad's anger settled into a different shape. He became obsessed with the fact that I had made everything official. "You could have called me first," he said during one of the few phone calls I answered. "I did not need to call you before disputing my own signature. You knew we were trying to help Fiona. That does not authorize my name. Nobody was trying to hurt you. I believe you were trying to get an outcome you wanted. That is not the same thing." "No, it is not. But intent does not erase what you did." He hated that answer. Mom's position was that Grandma would have wanted Fiona helped, so whatever shortcuts had been taken were morally justified by the end goal. She never gave me a clean explanation for the signature. Neither did Dad. Fiona got closer than either of them. About 3 weeks after the dinner, she asked to meet me alone. I agreed, but we met at a coffee shop instead of either of our homes. She looked tired and angry. "We lost the house," she said as soon as she sat down. "I heard. The kids had picked rooms." "I'm sorry." "Please stop saying that." "What do you want me to say?" "That you know you could have prevented it. I could have let a disputed deed close. I was not going to do that." She stirred her coffee without drinking it. "You really think I wanted someone to fake your signature? I think you knew something was wrong and decided not to look too closely." Her eyes came up. "That is not fair." "Then tell me what you knew." She pressed her lips together. For a while I thought she was going to leave. Then she said, "Mom told me you were dragging your feet because Jonah did not want you to give anything away. She said Dad had found a way to get the paperwork done, and that you had basically already agreed in every way that mattered." "In every way that mattered." "That is what she said." "And when you saw my name was already transferred?" "I did not see the deed right away." "When you did?" She looked down. "I asked if you had signed." My chest tightened. "What did Mom say?" "She said it was handled." "That is not yes." "I know that now." "You knew it then." She started to argue, then stopped. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away, irritated. I did not want to know, she said. That was the most honest sentence she gave me. I believed her. She had not sat at a table plotting how to steal from me. She had seen enough warning signs to know the process was dirty, and she had chosen not to ask questions because the result solved a problem she desperately wanted solved. That did not make her a monster. It also did not make it acceptable. I wish you had told me, I said. I thought if I told you, you would stop it. I did stop it. Yes. And that is why you did not tell me. She covered her face for a moment. When she looked up, she was crying again. You do not understand what it feels like to think you finally found a way to give your kids something better, and then watch it disappear. You are right. I do not have your exact life. She gave a bitter laugh. There it is. No, listen to me. I do not have your exact life. I believe the pressure is real. But you keep asking me to treat that pressure like it gives you rights over me. I never said that. You did not have to. She stared at me. I continued. If you had called me before any deed was filed and said, I need help. Here is what selling Grandma's house could do for us. What would it take for you to agree? We could have had a hard conversation. Maybe I would have agreed to sell. Maybe we could have worked out a split. Maybe I would have given you more than my legal share because I love the kids. You never gave me that choice. Fiona cried quietly then. So what happens now? With us? With the house? That depends on getting the title corrected and my ownership recognized. And after that? I am willing to sell. She looked genuinely shocked. You are? Yes. Then what was all this for? That question hurt more than I expected. For the right to decide. She stared at me. I said, I never told anyone I needed to keep Grandma's house forever. I said I would not be erased from the decision. Fiona looked down at her hands. I thought you were doing this to punish us. I stopped paying bills. I stopped the sale. I told the family what happened after Mom publicly attacked me. Those actions have consequences. But no, I do not want your kids homeless, and I do not want to keep an empty house as a monument to being angry. She nodded once. It was not reconciliation. But it was the first conversation we had after Grandma died where neither of us pretended the problem was something else. The property issue took time to untangle. I am deliberately not going to turn this into a legal guide because the exact process depended on the documents, the estate, and the professionals involved. What mattered was that the disputed deed could not simply be treated as clean title once I formally denied signing it. There were reviews, document requests, written statements, and people on the transaction side who suddenly wanted answers nobody in my family had wanted to give me. The sale stayed off. My claim transfer was not accepted as a clean basis for moving forward. Eventually, my interest was treated as something that had to be addressed openly rather than wished away. That changed the negotiation completely. For the first time, my parents had to send me actual terms instead of moral arguments. Sale price. Estimated costs. Outstanding expenses. Proposed distribution. No one wrote, your grandmother would want this in the paperwork. No one wrote, Fiona has children. No one wrote, Jonah changed you. Numbers are not kinder than emotions, but they are much harder to manipulate with guilt. I agreed in principle to a future sale once the title issue was corrected and my rights were recognized. I also agreed that Fiona could receive help from the proceeds, but not through a secret transfer of my share. The final arrangement was less generous to Fiona than the original plan and more generous than some people thought I should be after what happened. That was my decision. That was the point. I did not give her everything. I did not take everything either. I made sure the distribution was documented and that my portion came to me directly. I kept some of it. I used some to cover money I had already put into Grandma's property over the years. I set aside a smaller amount for my niece and nephew in a way that did not require handing it to Fiona or Derek. I did not announce that to the family. I was done performing generosity as proof of character. Mom hated the entire process. She and Dad never gave me the apology I wanted. The closest Mom came was, we only wanted to help Fiona, and things got out of hand. I said, things did not get out of hand by themselves. She cried. A few years earlier, that would have ended the conversation. I would have comforted her, softened my words, and somehow apologized for making her feel bad about what she had done to me. This time I let her be upset. Dad said, "Nobody expected you to react like this." I told him, "That is probably why it happened." He did not speak to me for almost 2 months after that. Our relationship never returned to what it had been. I see my parents less. When property, money, or family obligations come up, I ask for details in writing. Mom calls that cold. I call it useful. Fiona and I are not back to normal either. We can be in the same room. I see the kids. We text on birthdays. Sometimes we even laugh about something that has nothing to do with the house. But there is a before and after now. She knows I know she looked away when she suspected something was wrong. I know she still believes, at least partly, that a good older sister would have made the outcome easier for her. Maybe both of those things will always sit between us. Jonah and I had repair work of our own to do. A week after the memorial dinner, when the immediate chaos had settled, he told me he was proud I had stood up for myself. Then he said, "I am still mad at you." I nodded. "I know. You let them blame me for your choices, and you kept me from knowing how bad it was because you were worried I would have feelings about it. I know. That cannot happen again. It won't." He looked at me. "Do not promise fast." So I thought about it. Then I said, "When my family makes you the villain because I set a boundary, I will correct it. I will not make you stand outside the truth just so I can avoid a fight with them. That I can believe." We were okay, but not because the D-drama magically made our marriage stronger. We were okay because he told me where I had hurt him. I did not argue him out of it, and I changed what I did next. That was harder than putting an affidavit in front of my mother. Months later, when the house was finally cleared for a legitimate sale, I went there one last time before the new owners took possession. The rooms looked smaller without Grandma's furniture. The yellow mug was gone. Miriam had taken it because Grandma used to make tea for her in it whenever she visited. The marks from the old couch were still pressed into the carpet. The porch rail had been repainted, but one board near the steps still had a tiny dent from when Fiona dropped a bicycle there as a teenager. I walked through the kitchen, the hallway, and the back bedroom where Grandma used to store Christmas decorations in mismatched plastic bins. I did not feel victorious. Mostly I felt tired. The house had once been a place where I showed love by doing ordinary things. Changing a bulb, raking leaves, paying a bill when Grandma forgot, carrying groceries inside. Then my family turned it into evidence. If I loved Grandma, I should give up my share. If I loved Fiona, I should stop asking questions. If I loved my parents, I should keep things private. If I loved Jonah, apparently that meant I no longer loved any of them enough. I had spent years trying to meet every definition at once. There was no way to do it. Before I left, I reached into my purse and pulled out Grandma's old key. The pear-shaped keychain was scratched and faded. Jonah was right. It still looked like a green light bulb with a leaf. The key no longer opened anything I owned. I kept it anyway. Not because I wanted the house back. Not because I wanted to freeze Grandma in a building that had already stopped being hers. I kept it because for years that key meant I was the person who showed up whenever somebody needed something opened, fixed, paid, cleaned, or carried. Now it means something different. I can still love people without giving them access to every part of me. And when someone tries to open a door using my name without my permission, I am allowed to change the lock. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.